Hi, I'm Joseph and this is Brewing 101. So I'm going to tell you how it works here, and then I'm going to show you how it works by doing it, right? So fermentation and brewing is not super complicated, and it's just pretty much just 3 steps. You've got an input, your fermentation process, and your output. And so in the input, we're going to be making ginger beer, for example. And so we're going to have ginger, water, sugar, and lemon or whatever other flavorings you want, right? Then in the fermentation process, we add yeast and we have a fermenter. So the yeast will eat the sugar and poop out carbon dioxide and alcohol. And so for our output, that gives us a carbonated and alcoholic beverage, giving us a result of the ginger beer. And so our process for the input is that we're gonna, blend it all up, cut it all up, and boil it to get all the flavors out, right? And we let it cool, and then we strain it out, and we put it in our fermenter. So once it's cool, we can add the yeast and have it fermenting. In that process, it's going to release that carbon dioxide gas, right? But we can't just have it in a sealed container, adding more gas, and it's going to explode. So we have an airlock on the top to release the gas. It releases the carbon dioxide, but it doesn't let the oxygen back in because that would kill the yeast. So on the bottom now, the only other thing is just a spigot. You've just got an airlock and a spigot, and the spigot, you just have it above the bottom layer just a bit, because this is going to be a dead yeast layer, right? So you have a spigot a couple inches off the bottom, and if you want, you can tie like a cheesecloth or something around the intake of it, just to prevent any particles or dead yeast from getting in there, because it tastes really gross. So that can take a couple weeks, and I'll show you how to tell when fermentation has started and when it ended, and that's all using the airlock. And once it finishes, you can just ball it up and enjoy. So let's get started. Alright, so we're going to start off with our input. I cut a lemon here, and in my 5-gallon batch, I've got like 3 lemons, and I've got 2 handfuls of ginger. So you're going to go ahead and cut that all up and just toss it in the blender. And just grind it down completely, get as fine as you can, and once we're done with that, we can go ahead and pour it right into our pot. And then just put it on the heat for a while. I did some errands, came back, and once it's all hot and boiling, it's ready, so go ahead, let it cool. And in the meantime, we can make our fermenter. So you just got a spigot, yeast, and an airlock, and your bucket. So for the top hole, I just drill a hole for the airlock, and then put that cork in, put the airlock in, and then just you're going to add a hole for the spigot on the bottom, just a couple inches off the bottom, like this. And so to fill your airlock, you can just fill it under the sink. You want to get both those 2 lines even. Alright, and that's literally it for the bucket fermenter. You just got your lid with your airlock and a bucket, and then your spigot right there. And so once that's all done, you can just put it together, but we'll take the lid off so that we can actually pour our input into the fermenter, right? So we've got a sieve and strainer there to catch any of the debris, and then we just go ahead and pour our ginger tea or beer input, right? And it's a really satisfying process, but it's still a little bit hot here, as you can see. And so for me, I decided to let it cool after I put it in the bucket. And so I'm pouring it into the bucket hot. And so what that's going to do is it's going to sear all the bacteria that are inside the bucket. And so this is called bottle pasteurization. If you don't want to spray down all your equipment with alcohol, you can do this instead. And so in brewing, sterilization is really important because you don't want any other harmful bacteria, or just any other bacteria really, to get in the way of your fermentation process. You want the yeast to be the ones eating that sugar, and you don't want anything else to eat it, right? Otherwise you might, get some nasty infestations. Alright, so this is just me pouring the second batch of my ginger tea into the fermenter. And so just to recap, the ingredients are 2 handfuls of ginger, about 3 lemons, any other flavorings you might want, and 5 gallons of water. And so this is where I added my sugar, just 2 pounds or half that bag right there. And after that, you can just let it cool. So this is, my fermenter once everything's in. It was cooled, and then all the yeast was put in there. And so this is afterwards, the day after. And so this is the yeast I'm using, EC1118. It's a champagne yeast. And as you can see in the airlock, there is pressure. And so this shows that the fermentation is happening. And that's really it for Brewing 101. Building your own fermenter, having just an airlock and a spigot and a bucket. And hopefully we can make some good ginger beer. Hi, this is the airlock introduction I promised you earlier. And so how an airlock pretty much works in fermenting is that you're going to have high pressure on the fermenter part and lower pressure outside. And so the carbon dioxide that the yeast emits is going to be pushing through out to the other end. And so that's going to be making those bubbles. And that's when you know fermentation is happening. If it's not happening, or if you have a leak, it's going to be still, like this. So pretty much the process is going to be, or it should be, when you first make your fermenter, it's going to be even. And then when fermentation starts, it's going to be uneven and start bubbling. And then when it dies down again, it's going to be even. And that's when you know you can harvest it, taste test it, all that stuff. And that is pretty much it. As you can see, this is my first YouTube video. It's kind of an experiment, but I've been having fun. I learned brewing, and I made something. And so I hope you guys have learned something, and you guys should try building a bucket fermenter. It's a really cheap hobby, I guess you can try. And I hope you had fun. I did. So, see you.